They stood outside the little house as the last light of dusk drained from the sky. The boy held his backpack strap with both hands. The girl shifted from foot to foot, watching the porch and the dark line of trees beyond it. For a moment, everything looked ordinary. A quiet street, a mailbox, the soft hum of a far engine, and yet the air tasted like something waiting to happen. They exchanged a nervous look, as if both of them knew that tonight would not be like any other night. Beyond the yard, the forest watched silently. A single shape moved between trunks, not fast but deliberate, a silhouette that paused and turned toward the house as if listening. The boy pointed, whispering, but the hush swallowed his words. The trees seemed to lean in closer. The shadows folded and refolded like a living curtain. The small light from the porch felt further away now, like a lone island in a dark sea. Narrator, deep suspenseful tone. In the heart of the dark forest, a fragile figure slowly emerges from the shadows. It's an old woman. Her back slightly bent, her wrinkled hands clutching a rusted ancient oil lamp. The flame flickers weakly, casting long, dancing shadows across the crooked trees. Her eyes, pale and hollow, reflect years of secrets, tragedies, and curses. Each step she takes crunches the dry leaves beneath her feet, echoing like whispers of forgotten souls. Sound effect. The soft crackle of the lamp flame, distant thunder rumbling. She pauses, turns her head slowly, as if she can hear voices that no one else can. The forest around her falls into silence. No crickets, no owl, nothing. It feels as if the entire world is holding its breath. Whispering sound effect. Faint, eerie voices overlapping, barely audible. The old woman lifts the lamp higher, and its glow reveals the outline of a twisted tree, its bark scarred as though clawed by something unnatural. Her lips tremble. She begins to mutter words in a language long forgotten. An ancient chant, half prayer, half curse. The shadows respond. They stretch unnaturally along the ground, crawling closer to her feet like living creatures. Narrator, tense, rising tone. But the old woman does not move. She knows the forest. She knows its spirits, and tonight they know her. Sound effect. The lamp flickers violently. The wind howls for a moment. Her lamp almost goes out. In that brief moment of darkness, two glowing eyes appear behind her. Watching out, waiting, too close to be human. She freezes. Her breathing grows heavy. The voices whisper louder now, circling around her. The forest itself feels alive. Branches reaching down like skeletal hands, roots curling like snakes beneath her feet. Music, slow, suspenseful strings building up. Heartbeat sound faintly underneath. The old woman steadies the lamp with both hands, pulling it close to her chest. Her wrinkled face is bathed in the trembling glow, revealing fear, but also determination. She whispers almost to herself, "Not tonight, not yet, the curse must live on." The voices stop. The eyes disappear, but the silence that follows is heavier, darker, and far more dangerous. Final sound, the lamp flame burns brighter suddenly, then cut to silence. Inside the house, the mood had changed. Neighbors and a handful of worried faces circled a small table, voices low but urgent. Papers were passed, plans were argued over, and someone slammed a hand on the wood so hard the teacups jumped. The girl listened to the grown-ups trade fearful theories. Trespassers, a prank, or something worse. But the look in her eyes said she had already guessed which truth was closest to the real fear. They sat in a ring. Tired parents, anxious teenagers, and the old woman clutching her lantern like a talisman. Silence fell between sentences as each person remembered the whispering stories about this place. Stories that had been told for years, and then hurriedly hushed. The boy traced the rim of his cup with a thumb and watched the others' faces, storing every line and panting breath. In that heavy stillness, the room felt less like a safe space and more like a council gathered before. The night swallowed them as they stepped into the woods, torches cutting columns of light into the thick air. Each beam revealed clumps of ferns, twisted roots, and the occasional scrap of something caught in the brush. A fabric, a footprint, a torn page. The torchlight made their shadows monstrous and awkward on the trees, and every crack of a twig sounded enormous. They moved slowly, careful not to call attention, but the forest waited without mercy. She walked at the front, torch held high, chin set with a stubbornness that did not match her small frame. Behind her, the others followed in uneasy lines. One step, then another, breath puffing white in the cold air. Every time the torch swept across a clearing, she looked for signs, a footprint, a mark on the bark, anything to explain the pulling sense of being watched. The girl's voice was barely audible when she spoke, but the words held steel. We keep looking. We don't stop until we know. They found him suddenly, a man with something cold and dangerous in his hand, his posture loose but ready, eyes like chips of flint. Nearby, a figure slumped in a chair, a person who had been struck or scared into collapse, breathing shallow with a bruise of moonlight on their face. The torchlight painted everything a raw, exposed color. For a second, the world narrowed to the quick hiss of breath and the dull glint of metal. Then the search party moved as one, some shouting, some frozen in disbelief. Panic spread like a driven wind. Branches snagged at jackets as people broke into a run, the steady cadence of footsteps turning into staccato and then scattering. Torches bobbed and went out, and the moon was suddenly a cold coin above the canopy. The boy and the girl sprinted, lungs burning, leaves slapping their faces. The path home felt both impossibly far and desperately close. Behind them, the forest answered with thudding noises that were not quite footsteps and not quite wind. Back in a small clearing, the old woman stood, the ancient book cradled in both hands as though it weighed the world. Her voice, when she read, didn't sound like reading at all, but like an incantation, measured, patient, and threaded with sorrow. The pages were filled with faded script and strange glyphs that trembled when the lantern light fell across them. Around her, the air felt thicker, as if the book had pulled at the edges of reality and shown them how fragile their world really was. They reached the shoreline and stopped as if a boundary lay between then and now. The lake spread out black and reflective, swallowing the sky and throwing back a sunless face. Their cluster of bodies, torches dimmed, became a small island of human fear against that hush. The boy watched the water and felt compelled to step closer, though every instinct told him to stay back. Something in the reflective surface seemed to breathe and watch right back. Without warning, the surface broke differently than with a ripple. It opened, cool jaws taking hold. Someone at the edge splashed and disappeared under a swallow of dark. Another reached and gulped chokingly as the lake pushed back like a living thing. Hands reached for shoulders and sleeves, only to find emptiness where fingers should be. Screams were brief and stunned, because the water stole sound and left. Only the terrible sense of absence, when people vanished from where you once saw them standing. By the time dawn bled into the edges of night, a single man lingered in a small house, lantern swinging slowly to cast odd long shadows. He moved methodically, checking drawers and cracks, lifting loose floorboards and peering into places where secrets hide. The house smelled of old paper and dust, and each careful motion suggested he was searching for something particular, a clue, a name, a reason why the lake had woken. His face was drawn tight with resolve and something like grief. In a scene that felt like waking into a dream, a figure stood bathed in cold, blue light and an angelic presence reading from a book that hummed with a soft glow. Her expression was reverent and focused, the pages turning as if guided by a wind no one else could feel. The symbols shimmered and dust motes spun like tiny galaxies. For a moment the terror slackened under that light, because the voice that came from her lips carried knowledge and a promise that there was a reason, and that understanding might still save them. They stood knee-deep where the lake met land, the book half submerged and drifting away on the slow current. Cold licked their ankles, and the water whispered around their legs, as if trying to tug them in. The boy reached for the wet cover and felt it slip, slick as oil, and the girl's hand closed on his sleeve to stop him from diving after it. In that helpless clutching, there was a strange intimacy, fear forging something like trust, and the book floated like an accusation between them. At last they moved onto a narrow wooden walkway that extended over the black water. Each bore a thin, creaking promise of safety. The air seemed to press in from all sides. Their footsteps sounded enormous on the plank and echoed into the dark. They kept their heads low, focused on each step, because one misstep meant an instant of cold and the threatened pull below. But as they walked side by side, you could feel a slow change. Fear still there, yes, but tempered by a steadier courage. They no longer fled. They advanced.